Hey guys, it's Ian Benjamin with Digital Hub, and I'm delighted to have as a guest is Gori Yahaya and from UpSkill Digital. And as usual, let me start by giving you a bit of a rundown in terms of background into Gori. So Gori is a serial entrepreneur, London-based, graduate of the University of Manchester, Bachelor of Science in Chemistry with Business Management. Gori started out his career in PR, digital marketing, working on accounts for Coca-Cola, Samsung, Nike, and then worked in the US where he launched his first startup and moved back to the UK and founded his third startup in 2015, which is UpSkill Digital, which we'll hear a little bit about today. So whilst heading up training and development for Google and for their digital garage, essentially a commitment from Google to upskill and train 200,000 SMEs throughout the UK. So UpSkill Digital is a learning digital transformation agency within its own right, and it's focused on delivering high quality upskilling of employee digital capabilities at scale, essentially. So they empower employers and employees to adopt and embrace technology in a people-centric way. And we've spoken about this, Gori, in terms of the client roster, which is very prestigious, which includes the likes of obviously Google, Adidas, Microsoft, BT, the NHS, Samsung, Bosch, many more tier one brands. So, and in addition, Gori is an advocate for diversity and inclusion, a very important subject right now, with the mission to support the people of minority and ethnic backgrounds to boost their career potential, progression, and to develop relevant skills for their future workplace. So that's an introduction to kind of give you guys a bit of an idea of the sort of profile of the individual and of how lucky I am as a host to have Gori as a guest on the Digital Hub. So welcome, Gori.
Thanks for having us. Super excited to be here.
No, not at all, not at all. No, I'm glad you accepted the invitation to come on as a guest. And what I want to do is how I kind of start off the podcast is kind of give, read out a testimonial. So I have been connected and had a few conversations with Michael Niles, who is a trainer of UpSkill Digital, and he's been a trainer for the last 18 months or so. And what he says about you is quite compelling. He says, I've been working as a freelance trainer for UpSkill Digital for 18 months now and have enjoyed it immensely. Gori has created an organization that is people first and dedicated to providing the highest quality support in building digital skills. He's an inspiring speaker. This passion and inspiration is reflected throughout his staff and the community of trainers delivering from a high-profile client roster. Digital transformation is essential for business growth, particularly in these challenging times. Gori's dedication to this goal puts UpSkill Digital at the forefront of this industry. So what can I say? What do you say about that? What do you say about
that? Thank you, Michael Niles. Yeah, I've worked with Michael Niles a little bit as well, and he's a great trainer. So it does talk to the mission that we're on, and I'm just super excited to have the fortune to be able to take it this far so far and keep on growing it.
Superb, fantastic. So let's kind of get into it. Let's kind of dive into it without further ado. So how did it all start? I mean, how did it all start? Why did it all start? Tell me about it.
UpSkill Digital. We've been around for about 5 years now. Yeah, it's, as you mentioned before, I've been on quite a journey myself in terms of, it's now my third startup, ridden that roller coaster of that entrepreneurial roller coaster. And I came back to the UK probably sort of 2010, I think it was, and started working around digital advertising and that space, and actually ended up, getting a gig that was traveling around the country delivering training on behalf of Google.
Right.
And that led me to see the gap that was out there for businesses and individuals that, genuinely didn't feel they could harness the power of the internet or the web or digital tools to grow their businesses themselves. They just didn't feel they could connect well enough with it. I mean, this was a point where I think 2010 is something like 35% of all small businesses actually had a website or digital presence.
Right.
People just weren't embracing it. So at that time, I realized that there was a great power in in helping people learn about technology in a way that inspire them to help grow their businesses or inspire them to, build great businesses. And yeah, that's where UpSkill Digital came from. It was trying to find a scalable way to do so.
Beautiful. But that connection with Google, working in such tandem with a global giant, how did you kick that off? That's a coup and a half, isn't it, really, to kind of like to land that, to slam dunk that connection?
Yeah, I was working with an agency before that was, affiliated with them, and there was a point where I got an opportunity to help lead a campaign on their behalf. Very lucky, but at the same time, required a lot of work. So building the content, delivering the training, recruiting the team around us to do so, and it was just driving hard work. I was working aggressively to try and build programs that scaled. And, when you're working with people, it's often challenging, but again, it's a really rewarding experience. And yeah, they also were a brand that, aligned with their pace of growth and their pace for sort of growth of other businesses kind of aligned with where I wanted to help people progress. And they believed in what I was doing as much as I believed in what we could do together, and yeah, it just grew from there. So absolutely,
right. So it was a win-win. Essentially, it was a win-win. They saw the value in what you'd done before. They were happy with what you did. They thought, well, do you know what? This obviously makes a lot of sense to have this external. You're doing something for them, essentially. So.
Yeah. It's a wider. There's a wider opportunity there. UK economy needs a boost around its productivity and its growth of businesses, and there were a business like many others that were really keen to help that cause, and wonderful. I was really keen to do so. So yeah, it was great to work.
No, it's well done to me, because only over the last year that became aware of the organisation in terms of what you've done and who you're working with, and I was like, oh my gosh! Then I watched some YouTube videos, which is amazing. So no, honestly, fair play, well done. I have to commend you on that. So from a SME perspective, a company that may be sitting on the fence, that feels as though they should or could use this COVID period that we're going through, this pandemic, and as a window of opportunity to upskill their employees, because obviously we're now working and living in a different world. Is there a type of an assessment, a template of processes that you go through that to assess what training a company could benefit from?
Absolutely. Well, look, small businesses right now, some of them are going through the survival mode, trying to move into towards the thriving mode, really trying to, I guess, get their employees together, to feel excited about getting the skills they need to push forward and drive the company forward itself. From a needs analysis perspective, so with all the business that we work with, we typically do a bit of a scoping call to better understand what it is that their needs are, help them align what is critical for the business right now and where gaps might lie. And we do that in a typical standard needs analysis template that we have, that we work with them on. It's super simple, super easy, but it allows us to uncover where we can implement the behavioral change or the mindset change or the skills adoption quickest and easiest, and ensure that we can maintain that growth. And small businesses need to really kind of invest in their people, right? They got to know that these people drive them ahead. So they got to realize that these people will have skills gaps. So, and those skills gaps are easy to plug, but then building that culture of learning so they can continue to grow is where we try to kind of embed that across the board. Right.
And how has it come about in terms of the relationships with your clients? Is it through referrals? Have you got like an active account managers, a sales team, somebody you're knocking doors? How do you kind of build that tier one client base?
Pretty much all of that, apart from knocking on doors. We've got people that are in the house that speaking. We were fortunate to get some inbound where businesses are actually on the search for companies to help them grow their skills internally. The large organizations will have heard of us because we're involved in some of the larger, more nationwide digital skills programs, and we help build that scale. We have a huge network of coaches, and that they also help us draw in some of the opportunities that we're currently engaging with at the moment. So it comes across the way through our website. We have people that can just go online, learn a bit more about what we do, and then hopefully they can book a call with one of our teams. So yeah, typically that's how it works.
So how many employees are you up to now?
Well, it's about 22. We've got about over 300 coaches globally, but in terms of
Wow,
the people
okay.
internally, yeah, it's growing. We're very fortunate to be a business that's growing during this period, but it also means that we have to find the right people that can help us grow and are ambitious enough to do so.
Right.
So yeah, we're growing currently.
So as the growth kind of like tiered, not exponentially, but is it tiered significantly through the pandemic because of COVID? I mean,
I
because of
wouldn't
the
say so. At the start of the pandemic, we were hit like many other businesses. You take a second to grab a breath and understand what the hell's happening next. But from that, you have to make the most of an opportunity to grow, double down in certain areas in the hope that people will take the call for the need for more learning, more engagement, and then hopefully you can be there to support when necessary, because when they hit the button, we work very quickly. So yeah, we
right.
needed to be able to invest in the right people, and fortunately we're in a good position to do that.
Superb, wonderful. Now it's really, really good. Okay, so I mean, we kind of touched on it at the beginning when I talked about, gave you a bit of an introduction to your background and what you're kind of passionate about. So tell us a bit about your stance and beliefs in terms of inclusion and training, because that's really kind of really, really important to you and also to me as well. So let's hear from your
Yeah,
side.
look, I mean, we work on programs that help organizations grow internally, but also on a lot of programs that benefit society as a whole, right? To give people the skills they need. We know that there are certain challenges that we face in society with regards to access to good training, access to quality, access to skills, access to progression, right? Generally.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think, where my passions lie, where personally I want to ensure that I kind of invest the best of my efforts, is ensuring that we're building inclusive environments for individuals to progress. There are clear barriers in organizations for progression for their Black and BAME employees. Same when it comes to gender progression as well. And
Mm-hmm.
many of our programs try to support that cause actually. So we built a series of trainings that engage everything from career progression for particular individuals to effective allyship across the entire organization, to ensure that we can break those barriers as best as we know, and that's through learning and empowerment. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And yeah, to deal with the wider digital divide, the wider digital inclusion challenge. This is it is a much wider conversation. But what I know best as a trainer, as a teacher, as an entrepreneur, is someone who really knows that there's potential within everybody, but we need to be able to really get that potential out there, is building those programs that can help people.
Right. Okay.
Grow.
Gotcha. Fantastic. Has that been accelerated since the George Floyd situation? Has that been accelerated in terms of in terms of companies embracing and acknowledging that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Companies are listening now. We've been knocking on doors for a little while to get them to invest in their talent, the talent they need it most, because they're battling things that they can't see, quite so clearly. And companies are now realizing that there are hardships that are there, there's adversity in the way, and they need to invest in that talent to make sure that there is a level playing field. So, since George Floyd, since a lot of these other tragedies that have happened, companies are willing to really look at their diversity inclusion programs and realize that they perhaps are not progressing people like they should do,
Right.
or helping level that playing field. So there has been more of a call out now. We're still seeing companies that are doing programs that feel a little bit dated, to be honest, where they're just not, tackling the true challenges, or they're not prepared to face those challenges. So,
Right.
we're still pushing hard.
Okay. So some companies are still kind of like turning the other cheek, as it were, saying, yeah, we know it's out there, but
Yeah, there's companies doing, just the bog standard kind of unconscious bias training, teaching people about the theory of the challenges that they face, rather than thinking practically about how do we help people progress and change and have the brave approach to change. And yes, again, they want to put it off as long as they can, but they've had a call to action now that meant in the last few months, that meant that they can't put it off any longer.
No, that's right.
To push forward.
Good. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, as well. And also, what with the business, I mean, the training side of it is one thing, but also you are a digital transformation agency as well. So I mean, how does that divide? What's the split in terms of your focus, or the business, the revenue, etc.? And what sort of transformation? I know from a training perspective, clearly, but I mean, in terms of going into a company and transforming them or digitizing them, tell me a bit about the differentiators there from a digital transformation perspective.
Yeah, well, different companies will feel they're at different stages of their own transformation digitally. So whether it's implementing new tools for the organization or getting their leadership or getting their people on board for the journey. We have, a fairly large percentage of our work goes into helping organizations transform internally, which means that's getting the digital mindset to change across the organization, building a learning culture that encourages people to learn how to embrace new tools, new technologies to help them deliver more efficient work, be more productive, those that are worried about automation and whatnot. So we have a large-scale blended programs that work with organizations where we'll use, an online platform to really give that, that more sort of scalable approach and that kind of backing to learning, whilst at the same time delivering virtual instructor-led training as well. So that allows us to really bring people along the journey around that digital mindset, really get people engaged, because humans, we know, learn from humans, right? So how do we make sure that is a live experience for them as well? And those transformation programs will go across entire organizations. Organizations that have tens to even over 100,000 people, they're trying to bring them along and give them the skills that they need. So identifying the skill sets, identifying what's critical, what's not critical, identifying best methods to be able to engage them, and then tracking them along the way and make sure they feel like they are growing and aligning it with their role.
Okay, so so do you feel that obviously UpSkill Digital, from the branding perspective, it's like upskill training, etc.?
I guess I can make it easy for you. The people look at training and say it's like a classroom-based thing. Walk in, sit down, learn something and leave, right? Simple intervention. When it comes to the transformation element, there's a lot more that goes into that. That is, changing mindsets. That is creating an environment through great internal communication, through adoption of tools at the right stages for the right people, building programs that identify individuals to be champions in their organization. So there's much more to it than just delivering training, right? So we build entire programs that essentially help you embed that digital culture, right? That learning culture that has digital at heart, digital first at heart, helps you amplify your digital strategy so that people feel they can really drive this ahead and help you look like.
Do you get involved in that? So do you get involved in that as well in terms of like designing the strategy? Because obviously from a training point of view, you see UpSkill Digital, you think, okay, fine, it's just about upskilling. But in terms of actually putting together a strategy about digitizing a company, how does a company know that's what you do as well? When, at what point do you introduce that, or at what point do you make them aware that's what you can do? Or how do they know that?
Typically organizations will say, okay, we definitely need to be upskilled in this area. And then when they come there, they'll say it's part of a larger plan, right? We need them to be upskilled here because we want them to be able to further with this department or this business unit needs to be able to further an introduction on this program, this project, this launch, whatever it might be.
Right.
And that's where we come into it. So, all the programs we work with, we have a huge amount of investment strategically in helping that program grow, not just getting those people to learn and get over this particular milestone, right? So that's where organizations typically come in and say, well, we know you can do the training, right? We know that forms part of something larger, and strategically we end up partnering with a lot of organizations instead of just, I guess, almost selling them training, right? So they really want a longer spell, 1, 2, 3 year program that really helps us take this part of the employee population or a larger part of the workforce to this destination through certain material stages, and that's kind of how we build it.
Okay, good, superb. Now, I know obviously you spoke about, we've touched on it in terms of some of the work you've done internationally. Is there any part of the world that you feel you'd like to do more work, you'd like to be more engaged, or that needs UpSkill Digital?
Yeah, well, look, we have a global offering, right? I'm very, very fortunate that we've been able to do a lot of work in Africa. Probably the last 2.5 years or so, we've been doing a lot of work on the ground there, upskilling some key individuals to help us scale our training there. Across the APAC region, Singapore, areas like that, there is some really interesting investment happening, around upskilling from a government level, which is, an area that we have trainers on the ground there that have been helping us start to look into programs. The US is another area that we know, because we have such charismatic trainers, that it seems to go down really well in terms of how we deliver the training that we do over there. It's more than just simple e-learning. They really like that kind of live-based virtual instructor-led training. So there's lots of different regions there. Africa, from a personal and passionate perspective, I really enjoyed the impact we're able to make on the ground.
I bet you can really see it, I suppose, and just it's really appreciative. They can imagine they really embrace it, especially like in West Africa, I suppose, like Ghana, Nigeria, that sort of area. I mean, which are quite
they're hungry for it. They're hungry for it. They're hungry for it, and it's just a kind of a growing population of people that are really hungry to be able to drive this continent forward, and you'll find that there are programs that are differentiated across different countries across Africa, but at the same time have the ability to really empower people to be able to create great products to drive company in the right direction as well. And that's just one continent, like many others, that we're making some impact.
Superb. That's fantastic stuff. Really, really good stuff. I mean, from an international perspective, I'd love to hear and know about that in terms of people's plans. I'd love to be able to grow my business internationally one day.
We can help each other.
Yeah, ideally, if you can. Yes, please.
Of course.
So, how do you define what skills are taught or covered? I mean, I think we kind of touched on it from an assessment point of view, but I mean, every company is different, right, in terms of what they need. So, I mean, does that kind of go back to like the needs analysis and that type of thing?
It does. I mean, look, different companies will either, as I said, be at different stages of their own transformation. Other companies in certain industries would have specific competencies that they're looking to, to ensure that they can meet. And we do that by industry, by size, as we move across organizations. It's
not like one size fits all type of scenario, clearly.
Not really, unless you go down to the early stage levels. So there are certain sort of national frameworks that exist, like the Essential Digital Skills Framework. There's a universal skills framework in the UK. Across Europe, they have DigiComp, which is like their digital competencies framework as well. So those exist to get people kind of up to the first stage, because even in the UK, it was something like 17.3, or just over half of all people that work in the UK workforce as it stands don't have the essential digital skills that they need to be able to operate in the workforce, right? So where some organizations say we need very technical skilled people, we build competencies based on the business alignment or the business unit alignment, right? And what their goals are. But then there are others that say, actually, across the workforce, we want people to get up to a certain level. Can you help us meet that level? And that's where we look at building a scalable program that helps them meet one of the 5 areas of the Essential Digital Skills Framework, or other areas of the other frameworks that exist, or competencies that they've built internally, a framework that we can basically align with. So, there isn't always a one size fits all, depending on the level of business that you go to, that you're trying to engage with.
Right, gotcha. Okay, cool. Okay, so going forward, it's been like 5 years. Everyone's got a business plan, and everyone's got their own sort of goals and objectives. How would you kind of benchmark the success for UpSkill Digital? How do you?
It's global growth. It's global growth. We're very fortunate to have a growing network of coaches, constantly growing network of coaches, people who believe in our mission and want to continue to be able to deliver, on our behalf, and do so in different countries. We've got project managers also based in different countries across the globe. So for me, that is success, but it's all about scale, right? It's my third startup. First two were very tech-based. This one is becoming more and more tech-based as we go. And the way I set myself is, are we able to move the dial on a national level in some cases? Are we able to move the dial within certain organizations where they feel like people are helping them meet their digital strategy, and they're really investing people, so they're helping them do that. So it's client by client. That's how we play with it as well. So that's kind of what that's from an external delivery perspective where I kind of see our benchmark success.
Because some companies, 4 or 5 years worth of growth might say, okay, we want to get like a tier 1 clientele, or we want to have another office in another part of the country. I mean, you're growing globally. And so that's where that kind of question came from. I mean, international growth you've already established that. Do you know what I mean? You've already got the tier 1 clientele. So, I mean, what's the next big jump up, would you say? I mean, it's just going to be continued growth, getting into more countries, more continents perhaps, or?
Yeah, we have a few interesting models that we're looking into. It's almost continent by continent, actually, in terms of how people engage, that can help us truly scale based on what they need on the ground there. And as we explore, I'm fortunate to work with a group of people that are really hungry to find different ways to do this. So, offices in different countries, yes, would be obviously, fantastic for us, but we have a fairly lean model that helps us scale quite quickly, in different countries. And I think we're working with that, and it's continued to grow. And then, as I mentioned, there's other models out there that we're really sort of reaching, we're really looking into to see kind of how we can scale and make more impact on the ground. Yeah.
Superb. Fantastic. Let's talk about you now, Gori. So, what drives you? Where does it come from? Was your father or mother or brother, or where's that sort of that entrepreneurial spirit? Where was that born?
This is an interesting question. Look, British-born Nigerian, right? Nigerian parents, like a lot of West African parents, who would have, pushed for their kids to study probably one of the Holy Trinity, whether it's law or accountancy or medicine or anything like that.
Be a doctor, yeah, exactly.
Didn't really have the need for that. I studied chemistry, which is the closest thing I could do that could satisfy them, but also have myself do something different. For me, entrepreneurialism comes from, the hunger, my curiosity to try new things and do things differently, and to actually see out ideas. I'm a trainer at heart, right? So I like things practical, and if nobody's out there doing it, I want to see if I can do it myself, basically. So that's kind of what spurs me to do this. When it comes to training, there's a huge reward that I get out of delivering training. I still train myself. Every few months I go out there and deliver courses, and always will. And
any particular area that you train in?
A lot more leadership stuff now. So it might be around, do some AI for leadership sessions. I do a lot more.
So what was that? Sorry, AI, did you say?
Do AI for leadership. Yeah. So governance, ethics, diversity in AI, quite a few interesting areas. For me, digital marketing, social media, lots of stuff that I they say the best way to learn is to teach. So I keep myself, as far ahead of the game as I can by ensuring that I continue to do that. And then career progression as well is a big area for me, because I run courses around how to treat your career like a startup, right? So really manage your career like a CEO, like a boss, and ensure that you can kind of continue to grow on that, as well, and have the business plan, all the rest of it as well. So what drives me? Look, I am fortunate to have a team of people that excite me every day because of the hunger they have to try new things, take their own kind of entrepreneurial approach, and seeing a team that is diverse, right? And that ambitious towards keep on growing, create more opportunities for more people, and help, I guess, almost make the world a better place through training and upskilling. So that drives me. Again, I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm always looking for new products and new tools and new platforms that we could play around with, and I get a lot of excitement from that.
Superb. Fantastic. Good to know. So what do you do in your spare time? Let's kind of get to know Gori now as an individual, kind of. So now, what do you do?
I would have said traveling, but that's not going to happen too much nowadays.
No. Well, around London, probably.
Probably, yeah. When I'm not traveling or I'm not reading, I'm normally building learning programs. As crazy as it sounds, I often find myself building a lot of learning personally, because I'm very intrigued about how people learn, and how to make it more accessible, more inspirational, more motivational. So I do a lot of that where I can. So my team will always see me building something, working on something, or collaborating with somebody with an idea to kind of build something else. So that's typically what I spend my spare time doing.
Superb. So no sports? Have you got like a favorite sport, like a fitness routine perhaps, or? I
did. I used to love playing football 2-3 times a week, but unfortunately I snapped my Achilles about just under a year ago. So that's kind of wiped that out. Yeah. So rehab has probably been the most exciting thing I can do with regards to sport. I only started running a few months ago, so it's that and cycling.
Right. So I'd say the football's done. It's pretty much done. You've hung your boots up, as it were.
Football's never done. just taking a break for a little bit.
Right.
I also did a couple of triathlons a couple of years ago, and since the Achilles haven't got back onto that, but that's also a passion of mine. So cycling, running, not so much swimming, but that's part of the triathlon. So I'm trying to get back into it.
Outside of work, have you taken up anything during the COVID sort of pandemic period? I started running. I'm a big guy, and it's quite funny because where I live, there's like a bridle path by my house. And since the pandemic, people from all sorts of I live on the Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire borders, literally on the border. And so it's quite rural. And these individuals since the pandemic have been coming out with their dogs, etc., walking along these bridle paths. and I've got a dog. I've got a boxer, so I've started doing a bit of running, and I take my dog with me. And I'm nearly 7 foot, so I'm running along the bridle path, and these individuals have never seen me before. Hear these like these footsteps behind them, and turn around and see this huge guy running towards them with a dog, and they're like, ah! Jumping out of there. So from a fitness and enjoyment perspective, I enjoy running. I've now taken it up, so I'm doing minimum 2.5K a day or 5K a day. So that's my contribution to myself through the pandemic. Has it anything new that you've kind of like taken up as a hobby, or that you've done that you wouldn't have done previously?
Nothing really stands out during the pandemic. I mean, I'd say I was in the gym a little bit before the pandemic. Obviously that kind of ground to a halt. But I have started to do stretching classes, right? So it's not yoga, it's not Pilates, it's actually sort of targeted stretching, and they have entire classes for it. And I started to do that at the start of the pandemic. That's because my missus actually runs a sort of a stretching studio. So that's definitely something that I did more of. And it's from a guy's perspective, it's actually much tougher than you think, because they even try to get people doing the splits, which any guy would cringe and say, why on earth? But exactly. But you know what? Considering the way we sit down all day long, considering some of the situations we find ourselves in because of working from home, and the way our bodies are really not going to enjoy this over the last sort of few months or so, it's really, really, really good to kind of keep the body moving. Yoga, unfortunately, isn't for me. It's too spiritual. But at the same time, like if I'm targeted, I'm doing some stretching, I'm focusing on some muscles, that's probably been the one thing that I'm doing more of, throughout
well, okay, interesting. I mean, so did you not have like a period of like 2 or 3 weeks or so where it was pretty much down tools when when the pandemic started, but everyone thinking, well, look, I need to get out in the garden, let's paint the fence, or do you know what I mean? So that's when it started for me, when I started running during that sort of window of period of time. So I'm assuming it was the same for you in terms of when you started doing the stretching.
Yes. So it was around the same. I mean, to be honest, I wasn't able to run until the start of that. So my rehab wasn't timed well enough. So when it started to get into it, then probably a month or so in, then I started to do my first run here and there. And that's been quite a commitment for me, basically trying to get myself up to running. So 1K, 2K, start to build it up as well. So that's been interesting. Housework wise, everybody knows who's been in lockdown, you suddenly start to look around the house and realize there's a few things you want to start doing. Yeah, like I have definitely enjoyed doing a bit more of that more than anything else.
I'm a nightmare for it. I'm rubbish. My wife's she's been amazing. She's done it. She's smashed it in terms of decorating.
You're lucky.
I know. But I'm really bad. Really bad at that stuff. I just mess things up, make things worse, and I just get too adventurous, way too adventurous, and I kind of ends up being worse than it was before.
Trying to paint a wall, you're painting the Sistine Chapel. No, I mean, I was I mean, that for me, it's like you just see little things, then you want to start to create and build and have some fun with it. You have to hold back a little bit because you're not going to refurbish your house just because you've got time to do it,
Yeah, exactly. So you seem like a sporty guy. So from a football perspective, so I'm trying to think. There's obviously Mikel was Nigerian, played for Chelsea. Margaret Essien, he was Ghanaian, wasn't he, from Ghana? So I mean, what team and what sort of players did you kind of like? Do you like?
I mean, for my sins, I'm an Arsenal fan, so Thierry Henry is probably the greatest. Not just because he was a great player, but he was also a joker. Like he's just like a really funny guy.
Great guy, all round.
All round, just a good, good representative of the club and whatnot, and like, so that's exactly, globally, and I feel like that. Yeah, so for me, that's the kind of person that I look up to. I mean, I'm. It's interesting. I don't think I'd ever get starstruck, if I ever met anybody apart from athletes. I don't know, athletes, whether they're footballers or whatever it might be, purely because I marvel at human beings that can,
it's the elite,
go far. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, when they build themselves up in that way and they have that dedication. That sort of dedication and how they keep themselves in shape and whatnot as well, and keep excelling themselves. So yeah, Thierry for me it was a big one.
Okay, cool, superb. I'm actually I'm the same as you. I mean, not in terms of football. I'm a Newcastle supporter. That's a long story how that happened, but from way back in the day. Do you remember like Esprilia and David Ginola?
Of course, with the celebrations. Who can forget that?
100%. And I spent a lot of time up there many years ago. I spent a lot of time in Newcastle. So I didn't support anybody at the time, So I started supporting them, and that's it really. Kind of, I've been smitten everything ever since. But I'm also a musician. I play the drums, and so in terms of being starstruck, certain individuals, like you mentioned, like footballers, I'm the same with certain musicians as well, certain drummers, you know, that I would be totally starstruck by. So I hear you on that. I hear you on that. Brilliant.
Yeah.
What's your kind of continue to kind of find out about Gori? So what's your favorite tipple?
I feel like I haven't drunk a lot in a while, to be honest with you, but I'll keep it simpler. Quite like a gin and tonic.
Oh, me
really
too.
Simple.
I'm getting into my gin, yeah, 100%.
Nice and easy, yeah. So I probably have a little bit of that. I mean, when it's a summer, that's easy. Like I'm not a crazy beer drinker. I'm not a crazy whiskey drinker. Yeah, something simple.
Right, okay, good. I'm kind of getting into that as well. But no, I do like my beers in the summer, but to get into my Tanquerays, light Tanqueray, something about it from the gin perspective. So that's my tipple at the moment in time. And then if you had to make a choice between an Aston or Bentley, or what's your what would float your boat if you had a choice? If you haven't already got one or two of them,
neither.
Stuck away. You go.
Probably an Aston. Bentleys are too beefy for me. It's not my style.
Well, the Bentley's too beefy for you.
Too beefy. Yeah. Not a style. Too boxy for my liking. You know, Aston's much nicer from my perspective.
Oh, really? No, I love a Bentley. I love a Bentley.
Okay.
I don't think I'll get in an Aston anyway, but I mean, I'm not.
Yeah, you're a big guy. Probably sounds like a Bentley would be more comfortable for you regardless.
Yeah, probably get a G-Wagon or something. And best holiday for you? I mean, sunny sort of things, or I mean, like, you know, I can't imagine you into skiing or nature walks, are you? Or...
I've done it all. One of the best holidays that I had was a few years ago now. I went into the Columbian jungle, did a 5-day trek across the jungle. It was called the Lost City kind of hike. Very minimal paths. I got lost in there a couple of times. Few hours spent.
How many you were doing in this trek?
So you're in 8 of you stretched out. You do 6-hour-long walks, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. But you stretch out so far because it's such a long walk that you end up being on your own for the most part. Somebody
really
behind you, half an hour in front. Yeah. So like, I remember it got pretty hairy out there. Sort of snakes and spiders and everything. I remember sleeping in Madison. They bring the food up, you know, from the river. They'll catch it. And
so was it one person awake all the time, or one person awake or looking out, or how would you?
You have somebody comes with you, one of your 8. That's a cook, and they've done that trek. So yeah, they'll be awake. They'll be one at the front, one in the back, and then they'll basically kind of follow you along. One of the best trips. 2 reasons. One, because genuinely cut off from technology. So you're in the middle of the Colombian jungle. There isn't any Wi-Fi, so
nothing
you're quite comfortably. Exactly. So you're soaking it all up. The air is unbelievable. Like that's one of the best trips I'd ever had. And then, you know, from the second part, you really got to keep your wits about you. So that was that was intense.
So did you know the other people in the trip, or were they all?
I went with a friend of mine. So us two were together. So it was like it was tough. Like it was a proper hike. I mean, the height you get to, it's higher than Machu Picchu, it's higher than a lot of those places, and it's even more ancient than those places as well. So you can't drive it, right? It's purely a walk from the bottom. So it was incredible trip. And it was probably about maybe 10, 15 years after they had the sort of paramilitary and the scuffles that I had before scuffles. Obviously, it's much bigger than that. It was that kind of died down a bit. So when you get to where you're trying to get to the jungle, there are paramilitary up there who are just keeping an eye out, because I think a few years before that, a few people who were trekking got kidnapped. It was actually quite a nervous...
part of the world is known for like kidnapping, isn't it? I mean, it's notorious for it, kidnaps all the time. I mean, daily, I'd imagine. Got
to keep your wits about you. Yeah, definitely. You start on the trip and then they tell you that like a year before somebody died crossing this bridge and you're doing this, and you're like, I think I remember I didn't sign anything on this, and you're like, actually, this is. I don't feel it's a good idea, but it's worth it.
Yeah, sort of questioning why they never told you this beginning before you actually signed up for it. You know,
exactly. Got your money now. Let's get on the track.
Brilliant. Listen, Gori, mate, it's been great talking to you. Great guest on Digital Hub. Thank you so much for coming on board and being a guest on the podcast. And but before I go, is there anything that I can that you want to let everyone know, the listeners and viewers, about yourself, about UpSkill Digital, where it's going, what you're looking for? What can we do?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, from UpSkill Digital perspective, we're growing every day. And I think one of the things that we love to have people reach out to us for is opportunities to be a coach. We're always looking for more trainers, growing our trainer base, globally, which is phenomenal. We're very fortunate to work with a lot of organizations that truly believe in the power of people, and they want to educate their people. So we're always looking to work with people that are like that. And I think we're also, internally the team are coming up with lots of interesting ways to talk about what we're doing, whether it's podcasting or launching more articles, and we're always looking for guest speakers and stuff as well. So we're super open. We always want people reaching out to us where they see there's an opportunity for UpSkill to really make change or really help them kind of, deliver that change or drive an impact for program. Super excited to hear from people. And hopefully, through COVID, people have, kept their senses and been able to navigate this well, because, we have the ability now to kind of shape the world ahead of us.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of things that would have been probably happening in 10 years from now, like with the NHS embracing technology to screen and assess patients, that's been accelerated massively because of COVID. And and individuals, obviously, the upskilldigital.com, the website, reaching out to you on LinkedIn as well, I suppose.
Yeah, always happy to engage. And you are right. COVID has brought around a huge acceleration of change, but more importantly, from an inclusion perspective, what I don't want to see is many businesses kind of going back to what they know best and not being considerate of the inclusion programs that can continue growth and career progression for individuals as well. So it's a big area for us. Let's keep it inclusive. We learn a lot from the gender agenda and moving people forward. Let's do the same for those of color from a Black or BAME background. So really hoping that we can drive change that way.
Superb, wonderful. Well, thanks again, Gori. It's great chatting to you. And I hope you can come back on again and a guest in the near future as well,
Yeah, looking forward to, thanks for having us on here.
No worries. Thanks very much.